the pressure on kids in terms of cost to participate is a challenge, and it's a challenge we should try to beat, because the more kids playing sports, the better.
Welcome back to The Deal. I'm Jason Kelly alongside Alex Rodriguez. So happy to have with us Andy Campion. He is the CEO and chairman of Unrivaled Sports. Andy, great to have you with us. We have both been chomping at the bit for this conversation, so I'm gonna defer to my partner for the first question.
Well, thank you, Jason. Andy, great to have you. And you've had an extraordinary career. I mean, going back to your UCLA days when you got your undergrad degree and then you got your law degree, and of course, spent over 10 years at Disney before you joined our company, Nike. My question is, I'm going to start in the now, and then we can work backwards. David Blitzer and Josh Harris, they come to you. Take us in the room. How do they make the pitch for get a talent like you to say, hey, we have this idea, why sign up? Take us in that room, and why did you make that move?
So I will rewind a little bit from that David Blitzer conversation. And David, I will say, is why I'm here at Unrivaled Sports. From how did it start? Now, why did I do it is a much broader story. You started with our company, Nike. I'm not there. I left Nike in 2023, but I still love it. We had this amazing, unrivaled team there that was inspired to change the world through sport. And, from 2007 when I was there to 2023, that team that I was just a part of did some pretty epic things. And the company 12X'd, et cetera. So I still rep it. I know you can see the Under Armour logo here. They're an amazing partner of ours with Unrivaled Sports, and we'll talk about that. But I still do have some Nike footwear on, and I'm always going to love it, and I'm rooting for my buddies up there. What happened is in 2020, my family left Portland before I left Nike. And I continued to commute to Nike for about 2.5 years. And I still loved it, but what I realized was my family was moving forward and I was going backwards every week. And somebody earlier in my life said to me, treat every one of your kids' games as more important than a meeting with the CEO or your boss or the board or whoever, whatever stakeholder you come up, a client. And that was hard to do, commuting to Portland 5 days a week. And I was the chief operating officer. And so at some point you realize that's not right for anybody. I can't be the Zoom chief operating officer, but family and friends over everything, over institution. And so I decided there was a day where we had a 3-day strategy session. I was the chief operating officer, but I left at lunch, flew to LA, watched my son Lou play in a water polo game. Fortunately, I did that. He scored 4 goals. It was his last game of that season. It was in playoffs, but one of his best games ever. I flew back that night and went to the session, and friends of mine, our chief marketing officer, were like, that's when we knew it was inevitable you were going to leave. My son Miles and Lou play water polo in college together at Penn. My daughter's about to go to UCLA and play water polo. I've been to a ton of awesome sporting events, 3 World Cup games already, but those were the best sporting events of my life, and frankly, that's what bonded my family personally when I was young, and we didn't have much, but that was the inspiration for us as a family with sports, and it bonds my family to this day. So privately, some friends started to realize, I know Andy, he loves his kids, he loves sports, he loves LA and in Utah and otherwise, and he's not going to be there forever. It's inevitable. There's a saying what must be done inevitably should probably be done immediately. I did not adhere to that. Maybe I should have. It's all worked out just fine. But I kept thinking, okay, what could we do? And at one point, I locked onto this strategic idea, which was Nike. You'll get this, Alex. Nike was the leading brand in sports, but it just made shoes and clothes. And all of a sudden, athletes were looking at their shoe deals as a 401k match. It just didn't matter to them. They might have liked the brand, but it was a tiny amount of compensation, and they were just getting put in ads maybe. I mean, we had so many athletes, some of them weren't even getting put in ads. So I wasn't doing any, but all of a sudden, they're building their own audience. They're getting paid a lot to play, like they should, because they're sharing in the economics in ways they hadn't in the past. They're smart, they're dedicated to sports. It's why I started the sports leadership and management program at UCLA. I had this notion that who knows sports better than anyone? Athletes. And they're getting an education. We should give them more of an education in sports business. So I agreed to stay on at Nike and start looking into how we could get into the broader ecosystem of sport business-wise. And that led to some really fascinating conversations. Think video games, content, other products. And some conversations with friends, and one of them was Blitzer. And he was like, we're thinking about kind of building on this little thing we've started in youth sports. Meanwhile, that little thing, if you can see it, is behind me. They had acquired Cooperstown All-Star Village. And he said, would you want to help out in some way? I know you're going to leave Nike at some point. And this sounds cheesy, but I love the sports references. I was like, you said youth sports, you had me at hello. So I do miss my friends at Nike, and I'm rooting for them. But this youth sports thing has been, you may know I'm also on some boards, Paramount, Starbucks, Viore, LA28. There's other stuff. But the thing that's been just really fulfilling because of the impact you can have has been youth sports. And I attribute it to Blitzer. They've been investing in sports for a couple decades, long-term permanent capital in sports. And then I met Josh, and Josh also, had the same passion.
And so, Andy, at that point, it's a fairly nascent idea, and these are personal investments that I believe, keep me honest here, Josh Harris and David Blitzer did almost like a venture investment into youth sports. What was the state of it then, and what was the vision, and where does that sit now in terms of the growth of the Unrivaled platform?
So at that time, David and Josh had acquired Cooperstown All-Star Village. Someone had brought the idea to them. They explored it with their team and decided to buy it. And then they said, well, this is pretty fascinating. I now call it like the Disneyland.
Sorry to interrupt you, but so Cooperstown All-Star Village, it's a host for youth baseball tournaments, right?
Yes.
Is that a good
yeah,
program?
I would say Bob Iger at one point in a meeting to me when I was at Disney said something like, Disneyland is where the Disney brand exists in its most sublime state. Cooperstown All-Star Village is where Unrivaled Sports exists in its most sublime state for sure. And I might go so far as to say where youth sports exists in its most sublime state. So I'm sitting here right now. You see all the fields behind me. The fields are themed and inspired by big league fields. We're hosting a new event and experience we just launched called the Ripken Nationals. Think there's the Little League World Series for Little League. For club travel baseball at 12U, there wasn't anything like that, and we've now created it with tournaments around the country where you qualify to come here this week and compete for a national championship. Now, every week during the summer, over roughly 100 teams come here. They stay in the Players Village in bunks with their teammates and their coaches. No parents. I can't even get in there unless somebody sneaks me a wristband. 3 meals a day. They're playing a couple games a week. It's basically camp meets baseball and baseball tournament. And we look at it as if we can inspire the kids and make it amazing, it's also memory making for the families that are here watching. When I joined, basically what David and Josh are so good at as private equity investors, but this isn't private equity, to your point. This is their personal passion and investment is sports. So it's in their family offices. But they're still good at, hey, we identify good ideas and good opportunities, and then we need people, experience can be underrated. We need people with experience building experiences and brands, et cetera. And so when they talked to me, the idea was we'll name it. We named it Unrivaled Sports. At the time, it was just a word. But the inspiration was create these experiences that are inclusive and premium, competitive and developmental, unrivaled experiences that we can bring to young athletes everywhere and do it across sports. So we've done it across the country now in baseball. We have over 15 destinations. And the destinations plus controlling the programming makes it an experience. So that's kind of a little bit of how it started and where we are. We've expanded into flag football. We just had the Unrivaled Flag High School Girls National Championship at our property in Canton, Ohio. Not coincidentally next to the Hall of Fame there. We thought that's kind of a cool way to bring the inspiration of what everyone before them has done to them. We're in fast pitch softball. We're a little bit in soccer and lacrosse. We know some basketball people, having been a Nike guy, and Josh and David. So, it's inevitable we'll be in basketball as well.
All right. So Alex, question for you. How do you view what's the lens, like using the player lens and also the investor lens? Like, how do you look at youth sports?
Yeah, it's Andy, Jason and I were talking a little bit offline before you got on, and the one common denominators, all my friends, almost 100%, played Little League baseball. Maybe they didn't play football or basketball or
Yeah, it's
lacrosse,
amazing, isn't it?
But it is the
it is America's sport.
the family
really.
sport, right? Where everybody comes on Saturdays and
Totally.
lawn chair and you can, all that. I always put myself in the position of Alex, myself, the kid when I was 10, where my mother had 2 jobs, my father left us, and if they said you got to pay $100 to play this tournament, I'm out. I got to go play basketball or football. So that's the prism I look at it from. How do you solve for an investment in the space where possibly you can discriminate against someone like me versus the social duty and also trying to run the responsibility of a profit business? How do you put your head around that?
It's an awesome question. And to be honest, like where you start, because you lived it, you start with like, I have empathy and I want to have positive impact. I was born in Englewood, raised in Whittier, so East LA. We were broke a couple times over, but sports was the thing that bonded us. So for me, I looked at it as when David talked, I was like, listen, if I'm going to get into youth sports, people like to deal in absolutes, right? They like to go, well, shouldn't it all be free? Or why is it all so expensive? Or, people like to go like, well, are you guys just focused on recruiting and talent scouting and pipelines and this, that, and the other? Or are you about access? And, you don't build sustainable brands like Disney or Nike you're often not making a choice between A or B. You're saying, I need to do A and B, and I need to create something that doesn't exist. Just like you, Alex, not every kid on the team is rich. In fact, almost every kid on the team is not. And so what we always pushed ourselves to be was, let's be premium at every price point. Let's get more people playing sports and more people having the product they need to play it or the inspiration they need. So that's what we're pushing for at Unrivaled. We have some leagues, like Unrivaled Flag has leagues that are literally like league programs. You're signing up for your Friday night flag football league. We have Cooperstown All-Star Village, which to me, some people may say, well, that seems like very premium. I look at it as compared to what? Compared to Disneyland for a week, or compared to sending your kid off to camp? Like, Alex, have you happened to, did you come through Cooperstown as a kid? Or have you been up to these experiences?
I have as an adult, but not as a kid. But I went to similar experiences like Cooper's.
Yeah, so our hope is that we're making it like so amazing that you go, that's the best deal. One of the concepts we have is a spring break concept. We own this thing, Rockerbee Ranch in Texas. I know you're with the Rangers for a while too, right? So Texas likes baseball. It's 325 acres. We built out 80. It's baseball meets country with lodging, and it's actually really low cost of participation to play there. And the way we sustain the business is we have all of these other things that you can choose. You're not forced into.
And so, Andy, I just want to make sure that I understand it, because I approach this, as Alex knows, from the parent's perspective. May come as a surprise to you, I was not a professional athlete. But, I did raise a kid who played college sports. He played lacrosse in college. And so, I wrote those checks. I did all that stuff. And it costs a lot of money. So I do wonder, walk us through, if you can, just a little bit more of the mechanics of how it can be truly affordable to an Alex Rodriguez.
I love the question. So let me put this out there, which is the other thing we're doing at Unrivaled Sports. We start with the main thing, the experience for the kid. So here's the business model vision I have for us, and I think hopefully if we lead, it can be for youth sports. The pressure on kids in terms of cost to participate is a challenge, and it's a challenge we should try to beat. Because the more kids playing sports, the better. I mean, you can almost extrapolate that to in the world. So we need to be focused on how can we, manage that cost down? Well, just like in business, you go, well, it's an ecosystem. Are there things we can do to take pressure off of that? So here are our sponsors this week. Under Armour, Dick's Sporting Goods. Dick's Sporting Goods invested in Unrivaled Sports, by the way, too. Game Changer, Fanatics, Yeti. Fanatics basically is giving card books. All these kids trade pins here. Card books and cards for free to the kids. Rawlings is here with an amazing tent with colored gloves, etc. They're a sponsor. And what I realized was, at Nike, we wanted to connect with these kids authentically, not just kind of market to them, but be part of the culture of sports. But youth sports is so fragmented, it's really hard to do that. As we create this platform, think about, you guys are in media now. Broadcast TV. Nobody pays for it. Everyone gets to watch this amazing content for free because the sponsors and the advertisers go, you have an audience, and I'd like to connect with that audience. what we're focused on Unrivaled is get those sponsors who are endemic to sport, who share our mission like Dick's. And so that's one aspect. Food and beverage, lodging, the amenities, those things allow people to kind of opt into things that can fund the economics of youth sports. And then our job is not to be greedy about it, is to basically look at those economics and say, can we put them back into the fields? Like, we've got these amazing turf fields. Can we put an athlete's lounge together? We are actually working with CBS Sports because they are broadcasting the Ripken Nationals this week. That's a joint venture with us. We're putting economics and skin into the game for that. If we think about it dynamically, you can create a business model where all the weight isn't on cost to participate.
Right. And what I hear you saying is that the sponsorship and maybe some of the ancillary revenue effectively, either directly or indirectly, allows you to in some ways offset or subsidize the cost to participate. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yeah, and in a way that's hopefully inspiring. So those folks that are saying, like, we think we can do it in a way where, we're not just marketing to kids. I was at Disney. There are plenty of rules and regulations and laws around marketing to kids. My hope is that's never even a consideration because these are folks that actually want to connect with the kids and inspire them and provide them the opportunity to have great products.
So, Alex, we're going to wrap in a second, but I sort of want to put you on the spot a little bit because you're both a product of youth sports, but you also have a very vested interest in the development of talent. You're the owner of two very high-profile sports teams, and obviously care a lot about baseball as well. And also, you've been involved in youth sports, and very recently, in the last month or so, have hosted your own tournament in Texas. Like, what's your prediction / advice about what needs to happen in youth sports for Andy's benefit and for the benefit of our listeners?
Yeah,
it's a great question. That's a hell of a spot to put me in. But I'm fresh off our tournament and where we had 40 teams. Andy, we only had like 3 months to prep for it, so we had a great attendance. The energy was incredible. I ended up giving one-on-one lessons to about a dozen kids, and we had, 800, 1,000 people there. And every parent was like, Are you going to spend 15 minutes with my kid too? I'm like, well, there's 1,000 of you guys. I can't do all of them. But I think it's a few things. Number one is you got to have fun. And you got to remember, if the main thing is the main thing, to keep it the main thing, it has to be fun.
Love it.
There has to be an educational process. And my fear is there's a big disconnect between, I'm not going to go into the Disney boardroom and tell Andy and Bob Iger how to run their team. And at the same time, you shouldn't have like hedge fund people or just business people teaching the true fundamentals of baseball to our kids and the next generation of kids. So there's a big gap. I wish it was almost like a certification of coaches that you can rank them, right? Just like you went to Equinox, or if you go to 24-hour fitness as a gym. And then I would say the third part is make sure that they can play as many sports as possible, and you don't over specialize where they're feeling pressure at the age of 12 that if they don't play baseball, they're going to miss the train. So I would say those three things: fun, education, and play as many sports as possible. And of course, the fourth component is like we had about 3 dozen kids that went to the clinic for free. I'm sure Andy does that too with his Unrivaled.
Yeah.
But also to keep there's a social responsibility and a fiduciary to the sport and to youth sports and to parents to make it applicable and for everybody.
Totally. I should say there's a league in baseball. You may be familiar with it, Alex, called the Miracle League. It's a league for kids that have some ability challenges. And so we've created the Miracle Game this week and invited those kids, hosted them to come and play. And it's interesting, that accessibility part you're talking about and inclusivity. We asked the other kids who are here who wants to volunteer to work at that game. And it was like, there were no spots left for volunteers within minutes. It was like sold out. They didn't have to pay to volunteer, obviously.
Right.
But those types of things are also inspirational. Like having kids come to your events and see that other kids who might not have had access are at that events. To me, it's not just about sports. It's about that kid at 12 going, to those whom much is given, much is expected. I'm going to remember this. Like as I grow up and maybe I become a business person, or maybe I'm a coach and I'm a little too focused on like who I'm cutting as compared to who I can keep. in the game, right? So I love that. I wrote them down, have fun, the educational process, and play as many sports as possible. But no, I appreciate it, Alex, and I do think that story is awesome because to the point of to those whom much is given, much is expected, you both, and you in particular, Alex, have reinvented yourself in a lot of ways, right? Which is, I was at a breakfast with John McEnroe the other day and we were talking about reinvention. And he's like, man, when you peak at 26, you have to reinvent yourself. So he's like, no, but you've reinvented yourself in business and content and owning professional franchises. But then there's a part of you that, doesn't need to be reinvented, but there's another generation of kids who would benefit from it, which is like what you learned as an athlete in sports. And I love that you do that. I mean, we really benefit from every opening week here at Cooperstown. A former baseball player comes up and does opening ceremony. One of the reasons I launched the sports leadership and management program at UCLA was my belief was that in Los Angeles, whether it's athletes, agencies, entertainment companies, that there would be people who sports have done so much for that would say, yeah, I'll drive across town and try to have an impact on those kids who are, 19 to 22 or 18 to 22 in our undergrad minor program or even in the business school. And so I found that like sports has had such an amazing impact on so many people, yourselves included, that more often than not, maybe not in every case, but in almost every case, you want to give back because it had such an impact on you. And so I love that you do that. I know you're a busy guy. You don't need me to compliment you on it. I'm sure lots of people pay compliments all the time. But thanks you guys for having us.
Well, thank you.
I love what we're doing. And again, I credit my buddy Blitzer for coming up with the initial idea and then, for supporting us building it for there. And I know he's a friend of your guys and was on your show as well.
Yeah, great guy, and yeah, we watch what he does very closely. Andy Campion, really good to spend some time with you. Best of luck out there with some high quality baseball, it sounds like.